to Indigenous Book Club, which is my Booktube account. I have a cup of coffee, my Scripps College mug. It's currently Mother's Day, actually, and it's super early in the morning. And I've been meaning to film. I have been filming videos, but those are going to come later. But I've been meaning to post again and have another video up on Indigenous Book Club Booktube account. So I thought today we would do a tag. And if you're not familiar with a tag, from the old YouTube days, we used to do this thing that I used to watch where we would come up with like questions that you could answer, and they would be in so many communities, not just the Booktube community, but I thought we'd do a classic Booktube tag because I've been watching some and I think that they're really fun. So please come join me while we talk about some of my favorite books from this year. Okay, so I'm gonna be doing the quarter year crisis book tag. And this is by Kristen Craves Books. And I'll leave a link down below to check out this blog post. And it's funny, this is called the quarter crisis because we really are in the quarter of the year. It's the beginning of May. We just finished April. 12 months out of the year, 4. Yeah, well, actually 3 would make a quarter of 12, but that's fine. So let's get into this book tag. So the first question on this book tag is, how many books have you read so far? And honestly, not that many. In comparison to a lot of booktubers, I think I'm not the most prolific reader. It's so interesting though, because it's like everything's so relative, you know, and also it depends on what you mean by read or read, because there's a lot of books that I start reading, but I don't finish them. And then it's all relative compared to like a lot of other people in my life who aren't in the book community. Like I read a lot of books in comparison to them. So books that I have completely finished, or made significant headway on, I would say 3 so far. And that's great, you know, we just all go at our own pace. So the next question is, have you already found a book that you think might be a 2022 favorite? And I would say yes so far. And I'm actually gonna pick Indigenous Books Club, I'm actually gonna pick Indigenous Book Club's current read right now, which is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. As you can see, I only have a tiny bit to finish. And I finished other books and started other books this year, but the reason that I am picking this one is because it's so different from what I've read by an Indigenous author before. I watch horror films, but I've never read a horror book, and specifically a book about slasher films. And that's just like so knowledgeable about slasher films and horror films. So that's the reason that I would say this might be my favorite book. I was reading this last night because we have a book club meeting today. And wow, this is such an experience. I highly recommend it if you want something different. And a lot of time I tell people like, I'm reading a horror book, and they're like, no, I could never read it. I would say just give it a chance, you know. I think a lot of times we think that we're a certain way for most of our lives, and then we might find out that there's a type of genre or a thing that we enjoy that we never would have expected. So this might be my favorite read so far. So the next question is, what is your most read genre so far? And I would say I've been reading a lot of literature books. I've completed these 2 books, or like novels, I guess. Fiction, and that tends to be the typical thing for Indigenous Book Club, is a lot of people like to pick fiction. But I have some others on my list that are not fiction, so trying to keep a balance going. Okay, the next one on my list is a book that surprised you, and I would definitely say probably Ruby by Lisa Bird Wilson. And I would say it surprised me because I read the premise, but when I first started reading it, it was like so raw and so emotional. And it was also quite shocking at times. Like, honestly, you read the first page and you're like, whoa, what am I getting myself into? And then, like, I love novels and books that can switch POVs, and this one switches POVs a lot and kind of brings you throughout multiple timelines. So I would say I was surprised at how much I loved this book and how fast I got through it. It's not that long of a read. It's pretty short, as you can tell by the size. But sometimes it's hard for a book to like captivate me and really catch my attention. Okay, the next question is a book that's come out in 2022 already that you want to read but you haven't. I don't know if this counts, but this book came out in November of 2021 and I don't have it, so I'm going to show a little picture of it. And it's The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. And it's also a novel, and it sounds really interesting. It's about a woman who owns a bookstore, which is so cool because Louise Erdrich owns a bookstore, and I'm also getting into like book selling now and doing the bookstore thing. So I really want to read that, and I would say that it should count for this because a lot of times, like when books get published so close to the end of the year, I don't really know about them until a lot of people are posting about them once it's come out. So yeah. So the next question is if there's any least favorite books or one-star books, and I do not have an answer for that, but I'm going to flip the question and say, is there any books that same kind of like surprising you or just like really different than what you're used to? And I would say it's Perma Red by Deborah Magpie Erling, and this book hasn't come out. It's coming out in September 2022. This is an advanced copy that I got from Milkweed. And I'm about this much in right now. And again, not a one-star, not least favorite by any means. It is just so like visual and so vivid, and it like scares me. And it's funny because like, okay, My Heart is a Chainsaw is very much like a horror book. It's violent, it's gory, it's about death, killers, all that kind of thing. And this one doesn't freak me out that much. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just desensitized from horror films or something. But this is like, I've been reading it the past couple weeks and like I cannot read it at night. Even when I'm reading it in the day, I get freaked out. Like it's just so bold and it's so visual and it's like, oh my gosh, like the man in this book who you will figure out in the first couple chapters that I'm reading, just like, and the family just like freaks me out. It's wild. So actually loving that. I like things that are different. I'm not the type of person who's like, this book is so different, it's bad, you know? There are some things, like some books that I do think are just bad writing, and it's not because they're different that it's bad writing. So I would just say this, I would add this as another book that is surprising me in this quarter. Okay, so the next question is one goal you made that you're succeeding at when it comes to like books and stuff like that. I would say one goal that I'm for sure sticking with is just being way more consistent with the book club and getting through my books and like keeping up reading in this first quarter. And so I'd really like to keep that up. I enjoy completing books and I enjoy when I'm caught up with our reading assignments for the book club and putting in a lot of effort for that. So that's one goal that I've stuck to and I'm really proud of myself. And the next question is one goal you made that you need to focus on. And I think that is, I haven't been reviewing books as much, but I actually wrote a review for Probably Ruby for a magazine. So at least I'm still trying. I just think that when I put too much space and time in between reviewing a book, I kind of just give up and like don't want to review it because I'm like, what's the point? I read that forever ago. Nobody cares about that book anymore, which is not true, by the way. Like, I appreciate reviews that come out for books that have been out for a long time because I just want to see what people are thinking of what they're reading. So yeah, I think something else that I'd like to focus on is making more review videos, making more review TikToks, and making more review writing posts. Okay, the next question is new to you, booktubers or bookstagrammers or book talkers that I recommend. So I definitely wouldn't say that these people are actually new to me, but I have known about their content for a while, but I just started watching them very seriously. And I leave a lot of them in my description of the videos, but I'd really like to shout out Native Lady Book Warrior. She has always been posting about BookTube on Bookstagram, and she's been my inspo for like why I even decided to do this book club YouTube channel, because I just saw how much content she was making out of books and I loved watching them and seeing her get really creative with BookTube. So that's definitely one person. The Secondhand Librarian is a really great YouTube booktube that I would recommend watching. And following on Instagram. Again, not new to me. I've known about the Secondhand Librarian for months, but I'm just recently starting to get into them again. I'm just going to give a shout out to Blackfula Book Club on Instagram. I will put their name on the screen or leave them in the description. Like, that is an Aboriginal First Nations book club in Australia, and I just love their content. And they are so sweet, and I love seeing the stuff they post. I really try my hardest, especially with something called Indigenous Book Club, to repost as many Indigenous people from around the globe that I can. I know that sometimes it might feel a little like USA focused, but I try every now and then, not that I'm perfect or anything, but I do try to like keep up with as many Indigenous, like global context, books, comics, media, and stuff like that. So definitely follow Blackfula Book Club, and they have a huge following and they're so cool. So yeah, that would be my last recommends. So yeah, that pretty much sums up this quarter life crisis. No, I'm just kidding. That pretty much sums up this quarter year crisis book tag. And yeah, I haven't got through as many books as others. But some other books that I wanted to mention that I've been reading this year, by the way, that I didn't get to talk about in the tag, is The Language Warrior Manifesto. Yeah, the other book I wanted to mention is The Language Warrior Manifesto by Anton Troyer. I cannot pronounce their name correctly. I'm going to Google that. That is a great book, and I've been watching his lectures on YouTube, and it's so, so good. And I don't have it with me at my desk because it's in my work bag, but How to Keep Your Language Alive by Leanne Hinton. Specifically about California Indian language revitalization. I really appreciate that book. I'm halfway through that book. So those are two other books that I wanted to shout out that I have been working on and I've been trying to read. And there's so many others. Like, I even just last night was picking up this book. My dad read this book, and I got a copy sent to me last year. We had a little real estate problem that is like documenting the history of Indigenous comedians throughout the United States, and also Native comedians like in the contemporary context and in today. And I've recommended this book to so many people, even though I haven't read it. But every time Indian humor comes up, I'm like, check out that book. So yeah, that concludes this book tag. Hakupa'ai, thank you so much for watching. Definitely check out the description to follow us on all of our socials. And just so you know, book club wise, we are going to be voting on a new book for June. And we're going to be reading a memoir. So if you'd like to participate in our book club, or you want to check out the books that we're reading, make sure you follow our socials, and you can join our Discord in the link down below. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Pahiko!